Today we're visiting the Franklin County Historical Jail, myself, my brother Val. This is part of the motorcycle destination, it's part of Iron Blackbird Motorcycles and Music. And we like to throw in the destinations as well, so when you're out on these rides, you can find a place to go visit. We're visiting the 1905 Historic Jail Museum in Benton, Illinois today. Bob Ray is showing us around, and he's kind of the curator over a lot of these sites in Southern Illinois.
They got the paddle out here. It's awesome.
Okay, so I'm Bob Ray, and I'm the president of the Franklin County Historic Preservation Society, and I've been associated with this jail museum since 1993 and the 1910s Auto Museum across the way since it opened in 2000. But this jail was built in 1905. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. I believe only 2 places in Franklin County are on that register. And the part of the building we are in now is what was the sheriff's quarters. And from 1905 until 1970, the sheriff was required to live here with his family. And one of the most famous occupants of this during that era would be Doug Collins, the NBA basketball star who lived here from 1954 to 1958 when his father Paul was a sheriff. So in this living quarters room, we have our office, and then we have displays. And then in the case of Doug Collins, we have his childhood bedroom from those years, 54 to 58. Then right above me, since this was the first destination of a Beatle to visit the United States in 1963 before they were fabbed, we have the broadcast equipment from WFRX radio where George Harrison entered the station, an unknown, and played for me to use. So we have one room up here dedicated to him. And then 2 rooms across the way from each other are Civil War museums because John A. Logan lived in Franklin County from 1851 to 1861, and called this his home, and he went as an attorney all the way up to the congressman and created Memorial Day with his famous General Order Number 11 in 1868. So what I want to do is just maybe show you the kitchen and some of the areas of the downstairs, and then back into the part everybody wants to see, the cell block, and then up to Charlie Berger's famous cell. This was the site of the last hanging in Illinois, 19th of April in 1928, and this building would be torn down without the interest that we have, the fact that Charlie Berger was incarcerated here for 1 year during his trial across the way at the old Franklin County Courthouse for 1 year. And that by far is our greatest attraction, that unanswerable question about why did he do what he did, who was he, and what happened here. In this display area, which used to be the dining room for the sheriff, this wicker basket is actually a casket, or at the time it was used by the coroner's office in Franklin County. So Berger, while he murdered and killed probably approximately a dozen people, his hanging was for conviction for the murder of Joe Adams, who was the mayor of adjoining West City. But Joe Adams happened to be a member of the rival Shelton Gang. Berger and Shelton's got along until they annihilated their common enemy, the Ku Klux Klan, 1923, and then they became rivals over gambling rights, territories. And so anyway, each gang had a armored car. Berger had a converted Lincoln, and the Sheltons had this converted oil tanker. And they engaged in several open battles. But Joe Adams, the man that Berger was convicted of killing, had a garage in West City, and he had the Shelton's armored truck parked there. So Berger had two of his gang members, the Tomlinsons from West Frankfort, two new members, to go over and knock on the door of Joe Adams. He answered the door. He had a note that was actually believed. Berger tried to make it appear that it was from the Sheltons. And when he opened the note, he came out from the dinner table. The two Tomlinsons shot him in the stomach. And the coroner put Joe Adams' body in that basket and took it back for examination. So that's the reason we have that basket.
Well, if you remember, when I was a kid, we lived in the house
In West City?
in West City that the Mayor Benton was shot at.
Well, and they had moved that when they built the interstate, and they moved it
Right.
over.
Right.
And, right.
And on July 4th is when that house burned. I was a kid when that house caught fire because of the furnace and burned to the ground. So, yeah, we were living in that house at that point.
Well,
And we were always told the first Mayor Benton or the mayor of Benton got shot by
Mayor of West City.
Mayor of West City.
Right.
Had got shot there on the front porch, I guess.
Yeah, there's a picture, a drawing of that incident where the Thompson boys from West Frankfort knocked on the door and handed him a note and shot him in the stomach and left.
Yeah. That was a cool little house as well. But,
Right. Well, there's a lot of history. But this is the kitchen, and the sheriff's wife usually made more money and accepted the job of cooking and preparing meals for the prisoners, paid so many cents a meal, but that was more lucrative than being the sheriff. In the case of Doug Collins, Doug's mother moved in as well as his grandmother, and they would use the orderlies. Most of the prisoners here, there's only one hanging, but most of the orderlies were in for drunken disorderly theft, so forth, and they would help prepare and serve the meals. And they were all prepared here in this kitchen. At later years, this became an office after 1970, and the kitchen moved downstairs.
Well, that is one heck of a meat cleaver in there.
That's right.
It almost looks like some sort of a horror flick kitchen back there, doesn't it?
That gets your attention. And in here, since we're on the first floor, this is the stairway leading up, and this is a news. For a while, we had on display the news, but a more interesting story to me, or equally interesting, is the hangman Phil Hanna. When he was a little boy, he attended a hanging. It took the victim 45 minutes to die. There's a new book about Phil Hanna, and I think it was 78 hangings he performed as a humane hangman, including Berger, and this was one of his ropes. These are the peerless handcuffs that Berger was wearing the day that he was hanged, when he was hanged. And we'll tell a lot more when we get up to Berger's cell about the day of the hanging. Okay, well then, I was going to take you to the armory room. So we're proud of our armory room, which is actually the lower pocket cell, which is where the Tomlinsons were staying when Berger was upstairs for a period of time. And in this very room is where one of the Tomlinson brothers told about the killing of Joe Adams, and Berger knew that he was pretty much finished at that point. So we have, this was Berger's, Seth Joe, or Glenn Young, was hired by the Marion Ministerial Alliance to eliminate alcohol sales in Southern Illinois. And the KKK got up to be a membership of 3,000. It really was an extension of the Anti-Saloon League and anti-liquor. But what they didn't like is, Franklin County was about twice the size. West Frankfort went from nothing to 20,000, and Benton went from 3,000 to 10,000 from 1901 until the early 20s with the discovery of the richest coal reserves in the world. So Berger is pictured at his Shady Rest hideout, which is on Route 13 between Marion and Harrisburg. It's gone now. So he's sitting on the roof, and he has a bulletproof vest, and he has a Thompson machine gun. I think there are 3 Thompsons in that photo. So in the late 90s, the ATF confiscated 2 of Berger's machine guns. They're registered to a affiliate named C.V. Parker from Harrisburg. So 2 of those guns are here. We're minus one of the stocks, which clips on. So you have a 100-round drum to the right and a 50 to the left. And that very exact bulletproof vest is over there on that trunk. And it came from his house. after his hanging, and was given an attorney's family handed it down. And upon the opening of this museum, they said, we found the perfect place to get rid of this thing, and they donated it to us.
So is that Charlie's briefcase up there?
That trunk was Charlie's, and
Yeah.
with a bulletproof vest is his actual. And now there's a lead waistband down here that came with the vest. It's displayed. So that has lead bars in it. And there's a story that Charlie wanted to test it, so he had one of his gang members put it on and shot him a couple of rounds with a machine gun just to see if it worked, and it did. There was a big shootout in 1923 in Heron, and Ora Thomas and S. Glenn Young were killed simultaneously. And that Colt Pearl Handle 45 is the one that is in his holster up here. And he had that in his hand when he was killed, and that gun killed Ora Thomas, whose picture's up here to the left, who was a Berger affiliate.
That's a gorgeous 1911. Was that refinished?
No, it's just the way.
That's the original condition.
It is.
That gun looks brand new.
Yeah.
So that was Berger's Derringer there, huh?
It was, and he, of course, he should have been a politician. He calculated everything for effect. So he gave that to a member of the county assistant state's attorney. They'd taken it when he came here to jail. But they had it in the gun room, and they have that, and I won't be using it anymore, so he gifted that to him. Then we ended up with it. And I don't want to get into every sub story, but that's Berger's cash register. So he lived before Prohibition in the Volstead Act. He was living in a little Russian-speaking town southwest of Harrisburg and at Ledford. And he had the only telephone, he had the only transportation to town. He's one of the few who spoke English. The rest of them were Russian-speaking coal miners. And then back in the 70s, so people were having their first water line, and that was unearthed out of the ground, the back plate to a cash register. And we were over here working on the museum, and the couple who had that said they had decided that they should donate that. So what are the chances? The building burned. It was underground for all these years, and then an excavator digs it up where they're putting in a water line and gets kicked up, and the couple comes over and donates it. So just a rare chance it would be here. These are the Berger gang members. When we opened the museum, people were ashamed to say they were related to them, and now it's like the Jesse James gang, and we have people who travel 500 miles and say, that was my ancestor, and they're proud of the fact that he was part of the famous Berger gang.
That creepy old fella just about scared me when I walked through there because I thought, who's sitting there?
You know, on the back of his neck it says John Wilkes Booth. He came from a museum. It did. Look at the keys.
Guy looks like Ronald Reagan.
I'm busting out of here, coppers. Let me out, coppers. Let me out.
We'll get a shot of us sitting in a cell and I can take our picture.
There's a shower in here. You need a picture of that shower. Only shower in the block.
He's going to see, I cannot find the key. This is locked, and someone has the key. This lever, there's a lever system on each side. You can control each door individually or open them all together.
Someone may keep that key hid so nobody locks herself in this.
Well, people come in and try to control these levers.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're doing, you could get them jimmied up, especially if somebody's standing there for a photo op and you tell them it's going to be 2 days, well, you get them out of there. So inside here, the max stay is 364 days, which is 1 day short of a year. And they said there are some rare cases where the judge could say you have multiple 364s, where by law that person would have to get out for 1 day and then come back. But usually they either go off to prison, or we had one case in 1928 where the guy was actually hanged, but most people are here for a few weeks where they go the other direction. So.
That'd be hard.
So, this is Congressman King Gray on this book. He's responsible for Interstate 57,
Other interstate systems.
other interstate systems throughout Illinois. It was him and, was it Lyndon Johnson, I believe?
Of the interstates.
Yeah. And Lady Bird Johnson is responsible for some of the counties in Illinois not having billboards on the interstate. They have to be way off the interstate.
But he lobbied and received Wren Lake. It would be.
Yeah, and also lobbied and got Wren Lake put in out here, and he was responsible for a lot of stuff in Southern Illinois.
Well, he was the inventor of pork barrel politics. This is the guy
Pork-
who started it all. This is why we have a deficit, folks. This guy right here.
Kenny's rolling in his grave right now.
He'd be proud of it.
But anyway, yeah, Kenny was a Democrat, wasn't he?
Yes.
One of our best politicians, I have to say. He did more for the state of Illinois than anybody else has. But
Particularly
so-
Franklin County.
So going back to Charlie Berger, I was working, Kenny had a museum up in the Heights in West Frankfort. And Charlie, Kenny was telling me one time that Charlie had run through a town called Christopher, just 8 miles up the road here, and was speeding, and an officer pulled him over and said, when he pulled him over, he looked in the car and seen Charlie in there, and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, this was all a mistake. You can carry on, you know." And Mr. Berger says, "Well, how much is the fine?" And the officer said, "Oh, there's no fine. There's no ticket. Just go ahead. Everything's fine, sir." You know, because obviously he didn't want to wind up in the grave with the other people that Charlie didn't like. So what happened was Charlie said, "Well, how much is the fine?" And the officer finally said, "Well, it's $2. So Charlie handed him $4 and said, "I'll be coming back through."
That's to the word I heard it from that officer's grandson when we opened the museum.
Oh, really?
Same story, yeah.
Same story. Yeah, Kenny's the one that told me the story. So
Yeah.
there's two people corroborating
That's
that
exactly right.
story. So
That's right.
anyway, we'd like to thank Bob Ray for showing us around the museum today. This is one of our list of places to see in Southern Illinois when you're taking a motorcycle trip around here. We're going to be doing a lot of motorcycle trips around the United States and filming cool places, cool destinations, good places to eat, and fun people to meet, and people who know a little bit about the history of the United States to teach some of the younger generation exactly what happened, not what the government wants us to know about anymore. Anyway, it's been an awesome day here in the Franklin County Historic
If I
Jail.
could say, we're at 209 West Main Street in Benton, and we're on winter hours right now on this October day of 2022. But so we're open Thursday, Friday, Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. those 3 days during the winter.
This is my brother Val with Motorcycles and Music, and he's going to talk a little bit about what we've seen today in the jail.
Had a really good time going in here. It's definitely worth coming to see what it's all about, because there's so much history involved in here. It's ridiculous. I mean, it goes from gangsters to Civil War to the Beatles.
There's some Beatles memorabilia in there, some stuff where the Beatles, one of the first 45s ever played in the United States was played right here in this county over in West Frankfort at a radio station called WFRX. They've got the original turntables and everything up in here, and it's got stuff for everybody.
Even if you're not on a motorcycle, you need to come here and see this. It's amazing, amazing place.
And especially check out Doug Collins' childhood bedroom. I'm not talking about the politician Doug Collins, we're talking about the basketball player. And
well, I forgot about the
learn about some of his stuff, because a lot of people don't know as much as they need to know about his history. And Charlie Berger, the last man hanged in Illinois, was a big deal. This whole grounds throughout this area was covered in people to see Charlie Berger hang from that gallows up there. And even though that this is a replica, they have the original gallows upstairs stored in the second floor of the jail. And we've got some video of that, so stay tuned.
Truck in the driveway, it ain't mine.